So what led up to that? What made you decide to go to Thailand?
So, growing up, I always had like a big fixation on just like Asia in general. Um, and so like I always thought to myself, I'm like, all right, like when I leave the country, when I travel, first place, I want to go somewhere in Asia. And my like childhood best friend, he had moved out of Ohio. He ended up in Micronesia. And I saw him on Facebook and he was just like bouncing to all these different countries. And I was like, hey man, like I see you're traveling, like what's going on, dude? Like what are you doing? And this is when we're like 20 years old. And he was like, I remember sitting at an IHOP with my other best friend, Max. It was like 3 a.m. and I'm texting my friend Joe on Facebook. And he's like, yeah, like I'm traveling, dude. I'm going back to Thailand in March. You should come. And at the time, I was working as a catalog designer. And I'm sitting at this IHOP and I'm reading this message. And I know a lot of people, even to this day, like I feel like a couple of days ago, I talked to someone and they gave themselves excuses not to go on a trip. And so I was just like running in my head. I'm like, all right, what excuses would I need to like not go on this trip? I'm like, well, I have a good job. I'm making enough money. I can afford it. I could take the time off. It was just like every excuse that I could come up with, I just like shot down. And so I just looked at my friend Max. I was like, I want to go to Thailand. And he was like, what? And I booked it. That was in like December. And I booked it a few weeks later. And then in January, my friend Max talked to his parents and he was like, yo, I'm going to join you on this trip if that's cool. And so, yeah, it was me, my friend Max, and then we met my friend Joe in Thailand and we did a 2 week trip. So it was me and a couple of my best friends. And it was, yeah, it was epic. And it was a great first, first domino on my travels.
It's a little bit easier when you have friends to go with as well. I think that takes out some of the fear of it because you're like, oh, if something goes wrong, at least I'm with my buddies, right? Like we
100%.
can we can make it through. And then your friend that was in Thailand, how long had he been there before you guys arrived?
He had been there before. I think he was there during the summer for like a month. And then he liked it so much. I think he didn't go up to he didn't spend enough time on the islands. So beforehand, he was in like northern Thailand. And so he was like going back and doing like a full Southeast Asia tour and going to Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, all that stuff. And so, yeah, he was just like, yeah, just like come along. And that definitely made it like even more comforting to go with somebody who had already been there. And, uh, and yeah, he definitely didn't like he wasn't comfortable enough to the point where he's just like a tour guide, but enough where we could all just kind of like roam around and just like do our thing.
Had some confidence anyway. Maybe not all of the local knowledge, but some confidence. That goes a long way too, I think. Having the confidence just to go and do it. I went to Thailand, I think it was like 10 years ago. It would have been in 2015. So I guess just a year before your trip. And I had met a friend in Australia. I was there the year before. And then him and I decided to go on this trip to Southeast Asia. And I remember getting to Bangkok and being like, whoa, like this is a different world. Like, I did a little bit of traveling, but I had never really seen anything like Thailand. And that was the first stop in our Southeast Asia trip as well. And so, those classic things of like the super high humidity and like the heat and walking through street markets and all of the different smells of the street food, and people are like cooking fish and stuff, and I'm like, whoa, this is like sensory overload. Like, it's a hectic city. Like, how was that for you when you first arrived? Was it a shock?
So when I first went, like I said, I was working as a catalog designer. So leading up to this trip, I have all these like older people that I'm working with who are from the Midwest, and these are people who have barely even left the state of Ohio. And this is such a like negative, closed-minded mindset. And they're like, oh, like you're going to Thailand, like, hey, like you better be careful, like you're gonna get killed, murdered, robbed, stabbed, like and I'm like 21 years old. I'm like, I think I'll be all right. And sure enough, like the second I got out of my taxi in Thailand, I felt like immensely safer than I have in like most cities in America. But I will say, yeah, like 100%, like sensory overload. It was for me. It was like being a kid in a candy shop. Like I was like putting myself in those TV shows that I watched like growing up, like Anthony Bourdain, like going to these like markets that he'd been in and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, like this stuff, seeing it on TV and then seeing it in person is like night and day. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of like surreal. You're like, I've seen this in documentaries, and now here I am in the streets. So, where were you guys? Where did you spend most of the trip on that first one?
So I will say my first trip was amazing, but it was also in a way kind of a disappointment because we did just kind of like that classic Southeast Asia 20-year-old trip where you just go, and we did Bangkok and then we island hopped um, Koh Samui, Koh Tao, Koh Phangan. I think that was it, and then back to Bangkok. We did that whole trip in 2 weeks, and it was great. We saw a bunch of temples, we saw some of the culture and stuff. But there was one night we were on Koh Tao, and we were just like bar hopping these beach bars, and we're at this one bar and we're playing pong, and everyone's just like ripping shots and just like getting really drunk. And I remember just like standing there, I was like, this is kind of dumb. I was like, I traveled like thousands of miles to do exactly what I can do in America. I was like, that's not the reason that I want to come to Thailand. And
Right.
so I just like left and just like took a walk down the beach. And then later my friend Joe found me and he was absolutely hammered. And he was like, he had one of those drunk heart to hearts with me. He was like, anything you need, I got you, bro. Like, da da da. But it definitely gave me a perspective for like how I wanted to travel in the future. Like I said, like the trip was amazing. It definitely gave me exposure, and it was a great way to break that barrier to actually like traveling. And the next trip was a solo trip for a month in Thailand.
That's a realization that seems obvious to me that you would want to get more out of a culture or a country or whatever, jump into it a little bit more. But I don't think it's obvious to everybody. I mean, there are lots of people that probably go to Thailand every year and they don't know anything about it. They're playing beer pong all the time.
A hundred
They're just like
percent.
it's cheap. It's cheap and it's warm, and those are the only two things I have to know.
Yeah.
And I think that like I'm from Canada, you're from the Midwest. We have a lot of tourists that just go because places are warm, right? They go to Mexico, whatever, Caribbean, could be Thailand, Philippines. And that's really the only thing they're looking for. They're just running away from the snow more than they're running towards a new cultural experience or something like that. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, you can tell watching your content that you are getting into the culture. I mean, like especially in Thailand where you spent so much time. Now, I assumed watching your content that Thailand was the country that you've spent the most time in because I know you've been all over the place. Is that actually true? Is that where you've been the most?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like collectively I've spent like 2.5 years there over the past almost decade, something like that.
What was the longest trip at one time?
It was like 7 or 8 months. I was living in Bangkok. I've gone over to Thailand multiple times with the intention to teach English, and it's just changed every time. I've just like kind of like changed my plan. But yeah, I went over there. I think it was after I was living in Guam in Micronesia, working for my friend, and then went to Thailand to teach English. But I also had a couple trips um, doing event photography because my friend has an entertainment company and he works in a lot of countries in Asia. So I was like, all right, like I'll just set my home base in Bangkok. And yeah, I just kind of worked, lived. That's when I really like that was like that's when I got my roots in Thailand, I would say. Like I had done like 3 or 4 trips before that, but then yeah, I was there for like 7 or 8 months. Yeah, and I was like there would be mornings where I would like wake up and I would just like laugh and like smile because I'm like I'm living in another country right now. Like, because like the way I want to live my life is if I were to talk to like my 10-year-old self and tell him about my life, I want him to be like, holy crap, like you've done everything that I want to do.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And 7 or 8 months is a long time to kind of get into a culture as well. Like you're very much out of the honeymoon phase. You're just living your life now in another country. You're not in vacation mode anymore. What would be like the biggest difference, I guess, being there for so long versus like shorter trips? Was there a more like culture shock at that point, or were you already pretty used to it after being there a few other times?
For me, I wouldn't necessarily say it was like culture shock, but you dive in deeper into the culture. And this kind of circles back to what you were saying a second ago, where like, you know, you have those people who go to Thailand so much, but then like don't dive into the culture. And that's something that I noticed um, from this past trip to Thailand. I've met a lot of I've met a lot more foreigners on this past trip, a lot of like nomads, digital nomads. There would be people that I would met, you know, I would meet like some 24-year-old kid who has some online business making 10 grand a month, living in Asia, living that social media, you know, dream travel lifestyle. And I'm like, oh, cool, man. Like, how long have you been in Bangkok? He's like, oh, I've been here for like 8 months. And I'm like, cool. Like, what other parts of Thailand have you explored? He's like, none. And I'm like, what? I'm like, and it's just so weird. I feel like they almost like move here because they see it on social media and they want to have that influence themselves, but then they actually don't have any real desire with that culture. But with me, I was the opposite where it's just so fascinating and so drastically different from what America is and like my upbringing. And so that first when I was living in Bangkok that first time, you know, I always tried to like hang out with a lot of local Thai people and stuff. And yeah, I learned a lot more about like Buddhism and all these different cultural nuances and like how Thai people are just very like superstitious people, just like random little things like that.
Yeah, like the things that you can only learn by really interacting with the people.
Yeah.
You don't learn that in 2 weeks in Koh Tao or whatever. And I didn't learn that in my 2 weeks in Thailand. I wasn't also like a good traveler when I was in Thailand. I was pretty young and we weren't there for very long.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of a superficial traveler as well. Like we were like going to McDonald's and stuff, like like classic, like, whatever, Western guys just kind of fumbling our way through it.